Alright, it's Mr. Tech Easy coming at you again with a new video. This video is a little more complicated. We're going to be taking a logic board out of a 13-inch MacBook Pro. For those of you who haven't seen it, I've already done a video called Step 1, which is removing the bottom panel. So if you need help doing that, go ahead and watch that video first and then come back to this video. Step 1 is basically just removing the screws on the bottom panel and removing it for access to everything inside. So anyways, we're going to get started. I've already removed the screws from the bottom panel, so we're going to take the bottom panel off. Here we are with our 13-inch MacBook Pro. I need to check the thermal paste on this unit because it seems to be overheating. So in order to do that, I have to pull the logic board out. So there's a few things we're going to do to get started here. We've got to have our tools. For one, we need to have a triple head that's used for removing the MacBook battery. MacBook battery doesn't necessarily have to come out, but I figured I'd just go ahead and show you in this step since it's pretty easy. We need a small Phillips head screwdriver. I like to have a spudger for unhooking the cables, and then we also have a T6 star head screwdriver for removing the actual logic board screws. So let's get started by undoing some of these cables. First thing we're going to remove is the battery connector, which is right here. If you take the flat edge of your spudger and just kind of pry up a little bit, it'll pop up and you can just kind of push it back. It's out of the way. Next is the battery indicator cable right next to that. Again, use the spudger, just pry up on that. That's unhooked. Now over here on the logic board, we've got three different cables right here. One is for the keyboard and mouse. One is for the keyboard and power cable. One is for the mouse, and then there's a third one here, which actually I believe controls the backlight of the keyboard. Again, this is a MacBook Pro, so there's a little sticker here on this one. I just usually remove that and stick it right on the battery there across from where it goes. Now on these, there's a teeny little clip on the back side that you have to pop up. I'm going to zoom in here and see if we can see this a little better. So right here, if you take the corner and just pry up, it just pops up a little bit. Now we can go ahead and do the same thing on the ribbon cable here. On the back there's a little plastic thing. You want to be gentle because they're fragile. Pop that up. Alright, now that those are popped up, the ribbon cables are loose in there. So now I'm going to take the pointy end of the spudger and pry that cable right out of there with my finger and the spudger, and that cable's out. The same here. You want to take some care with removing these. You don't want to damage the cables. This is the keyboard, the touchpad cable right here. Again, flat edge of the spudger, just stuck it under there and pry it up. We'll push that back out of the way. Next we're going to move over to the hard drive cable. Again, just a spudger under the edge and pry it up. Next is the optical drive bay cable. Next is the cable that controls the Wi-Fi and speakers over here. Pry that one off. Next, this little cable right here, we want to be careful pulling this out. This is actually the cable for the webcam in the LCD. So this one here, I just like to slowly wiggle out back and forth as I'm pulling back. This one goes this way, not up and down. So that one pulls straight out. Now here's the speaker cable. These ones you want to be really gentle with. These have a tendency of cracking or breaking if you don't take them out easily. Now these ones do go straight up and down. So on these ones I take the point of my spudger and go underneath one corner, pry up just a little bit, then I go on the other corner and pry up gently, and there it goes, pops right up. Same thing for the CPU fan cable. Same type of plug. Again, the sharp end on one corner. Gently. Oh, that one popped the whole one up, so that's off there. We have one last cable on this one to undo. And that right here is the LCD cable. So this one has a little foam protector on top that keeps this from touching the bottom lid. It's got a little piece of black tape right here, which is connected to a little security arm that folds over and holds it from sliding out of place. So normally what you need to do is pull back on this little sponge piece, grab the black tape, and pull it up. You can see there's a little hinge there. Once that's pulled up, you can just, again, this slides back. It's kind of diagonally placed, but some of them are placed differently depending on which model of MacBook Pro that you have, but they're all in the similar location. So once you have that up, you can pull that straight back. Again, not up, but back. And there we go. That cable is disconnected. So now at this point, we have all of the cables that are connecting all of the components to the logic board removed. So there's a couple things here. One, you can leave the RAM memory in the board for the logic board removal, or you can remove it either way. I don't need to take it out. It doesn't affect pulling the board in or out. So I'm just going to leave it for right now. The only other cable that's plugged into this logic board at this point is for the MagSafe adapter, but we're not actually going to undo that. That will come out when we pull the whole unit out. So now that we've got all the cables unplugged, first thing I'm going to remove is the CPU fan. For that, some of the CPU fans will have a Phillips head screws on those, even though the logic boards have the Torx bit head. This one happens to have a Torx bit on all the screws that we're going to need to remove today. Now you want to pay attention to these screws as you're taking them out, because they're usually not all three exactly the same. There's usually one that's longer than another. Usually what I like to do is I like to loosen the screws but leave them in place, and then I'll pull the whole fan assembly out with the screws still there. That way I know exactly where they go when I'm done. So I'm going to loosen these up really quick. Again, this is using a T6 Torx bit screwdriver. So again, I just leave the screw kind of hanging loose there. And there's 3 of these screws. Leaving it in place, and the last screw. So now all 3 screws are loose. So now what I usually do is, you got to be careful that the screws don't pop out or anything. I usually grab the fan cable that we already unplugged, and I'll slowly pull up on it and just pull the fan out. That's all it's holding it into place, is those 3 screws. As you can see, all 3 screws are still in the same place, so I know exactly where they're going to go. So now here I'm going to zoom out a little bit and kind of show you how I like to place the logic board screws, so I know exactly where everything goes into place. So now that I have the fan out, I'm going to set it aside. We're going to zoom out here for a second. So now you can see I've got my MacBook Pro, the bottom all off. I'm going to slide it over a little bit. So here is the bottom. This is what we took off earlier. Now, I don't know how well you can see this, but do you see this black piece of plastic that's attached to the bottom? And this piece of plastic is basically a reversed image of the logic board. This is in place so that none of the metal parts or components of the logic board short out on the back of the aluminum bottom. So usually what I like to do is, as you can see, this area right here, this is where the fan was right here. So if you look at the logic board and the shape of the logic board, it's kind of this same exact shape, only flipped. So what I like to do is set this right beside here. I'll take my fan that we just removed and I'll set it right here. You can see it's kind of, again, flip-flopped here. Now, the reason I do this is it's easy. I pull these screws out of the logic board and I place them on the opposite side over here. That way I know exactly where it goes. So this side kind of has a little square end up here, so I know these two screws right here are going to go right here. That way when I put everything back, I can put them in the same order. Most of the screws are usually the same size, but sometimes they are actually different sizes, and it does matter. You do not want to put a long screw where a short screw was, or you can run into problems. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is we're going to remove the screws from the logic board. Now if you can count with me here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 screws we have to remove. So I'm going to go ahead and remove those really quick, and I'm going to place them in their corresponding spot on the tray over here. Now when you do this and you have these screws laying loose on here, you want to do it where your kids aren't going to be running around here, you're not going to bump the table and everything's going to fall over. You want to have a good work area, just because these screws are really small, they go in specific places, and you want to make sure that you don't lose track of where they go. If you had kids, I've got a bunch of kids and don't want them down here because they could knock the screws over or lose them or whatever. So anyways, have a good workspace that you want to work with. So I'm going to remove these screws really quick. We're going to remove first here and pull it out. So this is the corner here. I'm going to put it on the opposite corner here. This one here will go right here. Now already these two screws are different sizes. So again, this is why we want to make sure that we know the order that they're going back in. Again, some boards have all the screws are the same sizes and some are different. So now this one right here is right next to the RAM slot, so I put it kind of right there. Again, this little spot right here is where the RAM would normally go. So again, just trying to keep track of where all these parts go. Screw right here, opposite side right here. Screw right here, goes right there. Screw right here, right there. And the last screw on the logic board, 7th screw right here, again kind of goes around where the curve of where the fan is, so it's going to go right over there. So again, now all of our screws, we know where they go back on here. There's still 2 more screws left that are on the MagSafe port, which are right here and right here. So we're going to pull those out. These don't hold the logic board in place, but as we pull the board out, the MagSafe adapter is going to go with it. Now it is okay to use a magnetized tip on here. This is normally, but it's kind of worn out. I do have the little magnetizer, but I just need to do it, so I'm not going to do it in the middle of this video. So again, with the screws, the MagSafe adapter kind of goes approximately right here. So I'm going to set that one right there. And the second one right there. As you can see, they're kind of in the same order. There's a top and a bottom one. Those are usually the same size, but I have seen it on some models where they're different sizes. So now all my screws are out to remove the logic board at this point. What I'm going to do now is slide this over out of the way very carefully so all the screws stay in place. We're going to zoom back in over here again. So now we're ready to actually remove the logic board. Now at this point, we want to be careful when we're pulling it out because it has a tendency to catch on some of these cables, and we don't want to damage the plugs for them. So what you want to do is you want to start on this side and pull it up and kind of at an angle. You can't really pull it out straight because along this edge right here, these ports actually goes into holes on the side of the unibody. And the MagSafe adapter has to come out. So we actually kind of have to pull it up, and then we'll pull it out at an angle. One thing I've noticed is right here where the heatsink is, sometimes this catches on a lip right here. So as we're pulling up, it'll feel like it's kind of catching on something. That's likely what it is, or one of these cables. So you got to keep an eye on both. So now what I do, is I grab over here, I start pulling up. All these cables aren't really catching, and that didn't catch right there, so it actually came up pretty easy. Now I've got it kind of at an angle. Now I can start pulling it out. As you can see, it's pulling out of the unibody here, the holes. Now some people remove this, makes it a little bit easier to pull the board out. I don't find it necessary as long as you pull it at the right angle. Now again, as you're pulling this up, make sure you're not catching like your battery cable or the battery indicator cable. You can push them back. The same right here, your LCD cable, you can pull it back. So now I'm going to pull it up, and you just kind of have to feel and get the right angle until it pulls out. And I've forgotten something. I forgot on this model there's a little retainer clip right here that holds the LCD cable in place and grounds the body. And there is one other cable underneath here, which actually is the microphone cable. This little bracket has 2 screws, and they are Phillips head. So we're going to remove those really quick. Sorry, I forgot this step as we're going, but now with this one, again, I like to leave the screws in place, kind of like we did with the fan. I untighten them. Now here there's 2 screws. It's this back screw that's on the black part that we're removing, not this little one. This little one just holds this grounding bracket in place. It's actually attached to this whole bracket. So I'm going to undo that screw, and once it's loose, this screwdriver is obviously magnetized. Now these screws are different size links. So now I'm going to use my spudger to kind of help me pull it out without dropping those screws. So again, these screws, as you can see, one's over here is shorter than this one here. So I'm going to set this aside on our tray. Now, the microphone. If you can see down here, this little black rubber thing is a microphone. And I'm going to zoom in here because this is kind of an important step. So right here, pull the LCD cable back. There's a rubber plug right here that has a small cable attached to it. Now a small cable is plugged into the underside of the logic board, and you cannot unplug it without pulling this out first. So what I do normally, and this part initially, I've had this computer taken apart before. This part here is normally glued into place. So you have to take some care with taking it apart. Normally, if you get the sharp end of your spudger and you get it down along the bottom edge, you can't do it around this side, but on the bottom edge, there's a little dip in the unibody. You can get this piece underneath there and start prying it up. And once you start getting it at an angle, you keep staying underneath of it, and you can pop it out like that. I was pulling it aside. I'm not sure how well you can see this, but down at the bottom here, there's teeny little holes, which are where the microphone goes through, and then there's kind of a little foam piece here where this was glued down previously. Again, the glue's on the very bottom, which is why I was saying you have to get up underneath of it. Now when we put this back in, it does not need to be glued. I've found once everything's back in place, it doesn't affect the microphone at all, so it does not need to be re-glued when you put it back in. But when we put it back in, it will need to be set down into place there well. So now again, at this point, I'm going to zoom back out. Now again, pulling this up at an angle, we pull it out. All of this stuff should come out okay. You want to take care, make sure that the MagSafe adapter here doesn't get caught. But here we have it. We have the logic board out of the computer. It really doesn't take that long to do. It's pretty simple. This is the bottom side of the logic board. Again, you can see we didn't have to pull the RAM out. And as you can see here, this cable I was just talking about with a microphone runs all the way across here and plugs in underneath this taped piece. So there are some other cables on here, but nothing that has to be removed to pull the logic board out. The MagSafe adapter plugs in on the underside as well. So on this particular unit, I have to pull this out to check the thermal paste underneath the this is the processor and the graphics processor. So anyways, that is what is needed in order to remove a logic board. Really quick, I'm going to show you how to put it back in just to finish off this video, because it does kind of have to be put back in at an angle like it was taken apart. It's pretty much the opposite of putting it back in, but you definitely need to take some care in doing so. So what I usually like to do is you want to look at the MagSafe. That needs to go into place first. So I usually kind of set it down and guide it in with a finger. Once that's in, I hold this right here so I can kind of move it around as I need to, just with a couple of fingers. And we need to angle it down so that it fits back along this edge. Now as we're doing, there's a couple things to keep in mind. There's these cables right here too. Sometimes they get in the way. You want to make sure it's not underneath it, because otherwise you're not going to be able to push down on it. So these cables are back, and I've got it angled in at the right angle. You can feel that it's ready to go down or not. So again, MagSafe's in spot. These are angling in, and we've got our cables right here out of the way. The other thing to keep an eye on is your microphone. You want to make sure this doesn't get on the wrong side of this little mount right here. You want to make sure it's going to be able to pop back where it goes. So once we do this, you can feel it's kind of loose and it's ready to go into place. Now I just kind of set it down there. Now, again with my handy spudger, we need to now get it settled down all the way with all the cables on the top side now. As it sits right now, all of these are underneath here. Now we need to take great care with this because again, the cables on Macs are fragile. They're very thin, easy to crack. So main thing right now starting is that our two cables over here are out of the way. So now what I like to do is I take my thumb and I set it right here so I can kind of control it, and I start lifting up. I use the spudger to lift these cables kind of out of the way and lower it down. Now this cable right here, you kind of have to do some finagling and lift it up a little bit to where they don't fall down, but you can move the other ones out of the way. These ones that plug flat right on are the main ones because they have a hard head on them. As you can see, they've got a jack. The cables you can usually pry out after you've got it down, but still want to take care of that. So now I've got these cables all up above. The other ones are ribbon cables, and then these two cables I'm going to pull to the side here and lower this down. And there we go. It's already down far enough to be mounted. Again, sometimes it catches on this lip of the heatsink right here. You just need to kind of press that down. It doesn't do it on this model, but the little lip of it catches right here. So at this point, all the cables are out of the way. You want to double check to make sure where everything's going to be plugging in. You know, if you've got audio, sometimes they'll be hidden underneath and you don't notice it until you screw everything back in, in which case then you have to take all the screws back out to get one little cable out. So let's just go through and check really quick before we plug these cables in. We've got our battery indicator cable out, battery cable out, the backlight cable out, ribbon cable for the keyboard power button out, the touchpad cable is out, hard drive cable is out, the optical drive cable is out, the Wi-Fi cable is out. Here we've got the webcam cable out and the speaker cable out. The only other cables, we've got the fan cable, which obviously is on the fan assembly that'll go on in a minute. Over here we've got our LCD cable, which is out. At this point now we can take the pointed end of the spudger and slowly kind of guide the microphone back into place. It takes a little bit of finagling, and there's a rubber boot around it. You want to make sure that rubber boot seats completely in that hole, and it should look flat just like the way that it was when you put it back in. Now at this point, as long as you know that all the cables are out, it would be time to put all the screws back in, opposite of where we found them on the that we placed them on that back panel. Now I'm not going to do that in this step simply because I need to pull it back out and actually check the thermal paste on this unit. But you just do the opposite order now that you go in. Let me pull this up really quick. Zoom out here. Slide this tray back over. So again, the screws go the opposite of where they're at on here. This one here, our two MagSafe ones go back in there. We have our little assembly here that holds down the LCD cable. As you see, this right here kind of has a little bracket right here. We want to make sure when we put this back in that the LCD cable goes underneath that. I'm actually going to put this in really quick just to kind of show you. Now I actually don't put this cable back into the board until all of this assembly is on. So we're going to slide this back into place like so, at which point you could take your Phillips screwdriver and screw it back into place. And again, you don't want to do this until you know that the microphone is in place good. So as you can see, that's back in place. This is still movable, so we can plug it in. You want to put your MagSafe screws back in, and then move the fan assembly back in, screw it into place. The one plug you want to make sure to put back in also is the fan one. So there we have it. I'm actually going to just go ahead and finish putting this back together so I can show you from start to scratch. I'll pull it back later to do the heat paste. So at this point, before I put any of the cables back in, now that I know they're all out, I'm going to put all the screws back into place. I'll do the fan last. So I'm going to kind of go the opposite order of what I started. The MagSafe screws. This was the top one and the bottom one. Screw those into place really quick. Now, one other thing to keep in mind, this board has a little bit of play as it moves around. When we put these screws in, I'll usually put them back in and not tighten them down all the way, just so that way in case one of the screw holes doesn't line up, we can kind of move it around a little bit until all the screws are in place, and then we can tighten them down. So again, in the same reverse order, this one goes here, this one goes here. Again, this helps if your tools are magnetized. Obviously I need to magnetize this Torx screwdriver. This one right here goes right here. The other thing you can do if you don't like to have to worry about the opposite way, all these logic boards are pretty similar shape. You can draw on a piece of paper and put them in the same spot, you know, set it behind you. The main thing focus here is to make sure that the screws go back in the original holes that they came out of, just in case some of them are different lengths. This particular board does have different lengths, so it does matter. Again, as you can see, I'm not tightening these down all the way. So now I've got all the screws in place, with the exception of this one last. This is the 7th one that goes in the actual logic board itself. Okay, so all of them are still loose. So you can see a little bit, the board still has some play in it. But once this is in place, now we can tighten them all down. So we want to make sure we do all 7. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and last 7. Okay. Now we're at a point with the cables. I'm going to do the fan after we do the cables, just because sometimes it's a little tricky getting these cables right here into place. I'm going to slide this aside and we're going to zoom back in here a little bit just so you can kind of see a little better what we're doing. Alright, so now putting the cables back into place, we want to take care with doing so. First I'm going to do the LCD cable. So kind of holding the cable, again, there's the black piece of tape that's holding the retention bracket, and then there's the foam piece on top. You kind of have to take some care with pulling the foam piece back so you can actually see what you're doing. This part is probably one of the hardest cables to put back in. You want to make sure it's lined up properly because you do not want to damage this cable. It's very difficult to replace this cable if it's damaged. Almost something that I don't recommend you doing unless you are very knowledgeable with this. So anyways, I'm going to line this up. We need to make sure it kind of slides in good. What I like to do is just kind of help guide it with a spudger here. And that actually slid into place pretty easy. Now it's got this bracket again with a piece of tape holding it on. This needs to slide over this sponge protector on top. Usually I find it easiest to push it over, push with your spudger against it, that way you can slide it kind of over. This part is semi-difficult, but definitely doable. It just takes a little finagling. And once that's done, you can kind of see how this retention bracket snaps into place right there and holds it so that this can't slide back and forth with the opening. You know, when you open and close this, it does a little bit of pulling on this cable. So that's back in place. Now we're going to come over here to the audio cable and the webcam cable. So the webcam cable again goes this direction, horizontal, not up and down. So I'm going to just grab it between my fingers, line it up, and kind of wiggle it back into place. Now sometimes you can use the point of the spudger to push on both edges just to make sure it's snug in there, which it is. This audio cable now, which should be tucked under this, they're not all exactly the same on all of them. Some of them don't have this little bracket that it tucks under, but this particular model does. This now, again using the point of the spudger, I tried to line this up directly above. Now this one does go in vertically, not horizontally. So this one you need to line up. You can use your finger and the spudger, and once you kind of have it in place, you can push it down with your fingertip or the spudger, but that needs to be flush in there. So that's in place now. The Wi-Fi antenna cable, you want to take care with plugging these in. There's lots of teeny wires on these. Usually I find it best they pretty much align properly. You can kind of gently press down with it on your fingers, get it lined up. And once you've got it lined up, you can push down on it and it pushes right into place. The same with the optical drive. Sometimes you kind of have to feel it around a little bit to find its socket and then press down. Same with the hard drive cable. Now we've already got all these cables back in place. Now for our touchpad cable. Again, you see how much play there is. You just kind of got to feel it and line it up with the socket. Okay, now for the next difficult part, the keyboard ribbon cable. This cable sometimes is very difficult to put in, sometimes it's easy. Most of the time I find it difficult just because it's really wide and it has to slide again horizontally into this socket. Now again, keep in mind these have these little plastic retainer clips on the back side, both this one and this one. They need to be in the up position. While you took this out and moved it around, your fingers could have accidentally closed it, so you want to make sure it's in the up position. Now what I find, is I like to try to take the corner, or the point of my spudger, and kind of press this down. You can kind of move it around, as you can see, and get it to line up. Once I've kind of got it lined up to where it needs to push in, I use my finger, kind of hold it in place. And sometimes you have to press it in a couple of different places here. And once you've got it started, you can see it's kind of sitting in place now. Once you got it started, this is kind of the difficult part, is actually getting it to slide in this way. There's a couple of different ways to do this. Usually what I do, I'm pretty good at it, is I'll take the flat end of the spudger and just kind of slide it behind the cable here and kind of twist it, I don't know if you can see this way. And what that does is it kind of pushes up underneath the cable, and then you can use your finger to try to push it in place, kind of. Now what you're trying to do is cover up most of those little pins that you saw on the end of the ribbon cable. There'll still be a little bit there, but that cable right now is in place where it should be. Now if it's like that, it's not going to work. It's not in place. It has to be flush. So again, I'll pull that out and just kind of show you. Again, you kind of want to make sure it's lined up. And once you have it lined up, use your finger to kind of help guide it in a little. Once it's there, there, it's popped into place. Once you feel that it's in, you take your finger and you press this way down onto the black retainer clip. Again, those clips are teeny, so they break real easy. The other way that you can do this, if you're having a really hard time getting that slid into place, or you have big fingers, you can't get it or whatever, sometimes taking a piece of masking tape and just putting a sticky part on, setting it along the back edge there and kind of sticking it to that. Sometimes you can do that, and that'll help you kind of pull it into place. But if you have problems with that. So now we're going on to the backlight cable. Again, kind of the same deal. Use your spudger. This has 2 big pins on it, it's just power. And you want to line it up with that edge and kind of push it with your finger. Now again, I kind of do the same thing. I take the flat edge of the spudger, I slide it down and kind of twist it, and use my finger to push that into place. There should just be a slim line of gold showing on the back there. You can almost barely see it. If there's more than that, it's likely not going to work. And again, a little black retainer clip, you want to push it down. So kind of just take your finger and roll it over and push it down, like so. Take my spudger afterwards and just make sure that those are in place. Alright, so now we've got all these cables. Now we're down to, I always do the battery last, just that way there's no power going to the board. This is our battery indicator light, the little light on the side that you press. It shows you how much battery power you have. Again, this is one you just use your finger and kind of line up and press into place. That's in. And then actually, before I do the battery cable, I'm going to do the fan. So again, all the screws are still in the fan, so I'm going to gently set it into place. You don't want to drop it, otherwise your screws will fly out of there. Alright, again, sometimes these screws are Phillips. They happen to be Torx on this though, so I'm going to screw these into place. One, 2, 3, and then we have the fan cable, which is hanging loose there, and that again is a vertical. It goes up and down, so it slides straight onto it from the top. So just kind of line it up, push down with your finger or with a spudger, make sure it's there. Last but not least, we have our battery. Plug that in. As you can see on the side here, I press our battery indicator light. It's showing battery power. And there we've got our logic board back in. Just really quick, our side, all our screws are gone. Not turning on, but But as you can see, we got the logic board back in place. Everything's in place. There, it's lighting up now. Again, this particular unit has problems, so as you can see here, we're lighting up. We'll see if we get lucky and actually get it to turn on. Doesn't look like it. So anyways, that's it. This is a unit I obviously need to work on, but I was just trying to show you how to install or remove a logic board and put it back in. Oh, there we got battery or app logo. Let's see if it boots really quick. Accessing the hard drive, that's what the little spinning wheel is. Yep, and there we go. Booting up. Once you turn this back on, you will, or once you plug everything back in, you will get the dates incorrect simply because we unplugged all power from it. So as you can see here, the clock state's set to before January 1st, 2008. You just need to go in and fix that after you're done. So, but there we go. This unit will not stay running for very long because it's got an overheating issue, but as you can see, everything's working great here. I'll shut it back off. But as you can see, we pulled the logic board out, put it back in together, and everything's still working fine. So there you have it, Mr. Tech Easy, pulling a logic board out. Check my other videos. Try to do videos once a week on how-to videos, specifically Mac, but also some PC stuff. So subscribe to my channel, like my video if you like it. Help me kind of promote helping people fix Macs and computers. Thanks.